The building of Euston Station was a milestone, not just in railway history, but also in the history of the hotel industry. In fact, one could say that the railway pioneered it. People needed temporary places to stay, and comfy inns and small barns would simply not be enough for the millions of people who now had access to travel. For 145 years, the railway industry held investment, not just on the tracks, but in the hotel sector, and its hotel empire spanned over 140 properties up and down the UK. Euston's Station Hotel was the very first official station hotel and had two main dormitories that were built on either side of the Great Arch. It booked for the more discernible traveller and the long-term holiday maker. However, the directors ruled that if the dormitory was needed for passengers, then they would take priority, meaning the longer-term residents could not stay for no more than 3 nights. 2 miles away in the west of London, the Great Western Railway was putting its own finishing touches to its own temporary station. And not to be undone with the likes of Euston Hotels and its 300 or so rooms, purchased a public house for servants, while a private developer, who had heard of the GWRs nearby, created the Prince of Wales Hotel to cut in on the market. The Great Western had no problem allowing the developer to create this building. After all, the developer didn't know the station would be temporary, and it wasn't their money that they were spending. For 12 years, the hotel served the station's passengers well, but the Great Western made its move to its permanent dwelling, complete with its own grand hotel, right in front of the station's entrance. 1854 saw not only the Great Western's terminus open, but the Great Northern's King's Cross too. It too wanted to get in on the hotel industry, and its hotel curved around its station. William Toole from the Midland Railway wanted his terminus to incorporate not just the trains, but the hotel and company offices into one large building. St Pancras was the first to do just that, and it was the home of the LMS Hotel Department and finally British Hotels Limited after the nationalisation. By 1873, 4 of the big railway companies had successfully entered London, each with its own hotels, but these were all based from the north. In the south, only one line was allowed to be created, causing much congestion. The only option was to cross the Thames and have stations close to the capital. Victoria Station, built by the LB and SCR, and the building of 2 new bridges helped ease this congestion, and the new Grosvenor Hotel was built. Meanwhile, on the South Bank, the London and South Western Railway decided to buck the trend and not build a hotel at its new terminus at Waterloo, but the London, Chatham and Dover Railway's terminus at Charing Cross wanted to use its own station's footprint and build its own hotel right on top of the station for convenience. Out of all the station hotels, it turns out that plonking your hotel on top of the station proved itself to be the most successful. It was cheaper than buying additional land, and it was a practical zero commute for passengers. The other hotels flourished, adding extensions and annexes, as well as more facilities. I even heard one had a pool. But as the metropolis of London grew and the space became a premium, the railway's involvement in building new hotels was forced to slow to a crawl. Elsewhere around the country, the idea of building a hotel next to a station was catching. Towns and cities like York and Birmingham built hotels next to its stations as a matter of course, while many smaller towns looked to the railways to house travellers as the railways cut through them. While at seaports, hotels were a must for the travellers to rest before the tedious journey aboard boats. Islamabad Kingdom Brunel took great advantage of this by not only providing the trains, but the hotel and the shipping voyage in one convenient package, with the likes of Cunard and White Star taking notice. Offering hotels by the sea was not only good for travellers, but a secondary business appeared overnight: holidays. Welcome escapes such as Scarborough, Whitby, Morecambe and Brighton were becoming more accessible to the modern family, and it made sense to build hotels with those in mind. These hotels would accommodate for longer-term paying customers with a range of needs. Some would travel to get away, while others would travel to the seaside for their health. These hotels would be built normally overlooking the coastline, giving the most stunning views, and would have private beaches, promenade decks and extra facilities such as gyms, baths and billiard rooms for their guests. Other facilities followed, such as golf courses and ballrooms. The LNER adopted a different approach to managing their hotels. Instead of a central governing body, like the Midlands, the LNER opted to employ a hotel committee which oversaw the everyday running of each individual hotel. The committee would keep a ledger of all expenses in and out and report it to the heads of the LNER. By employing this method, it relinquished all majority of the involvement to the committees and the managers. The managers would report to the committees, who would sign off what they would see fit. Other railways played copycat and nixed the LNER's idea for hotel committees for their own, and by 1923 almost all hotels owned under the railways were run by committees. The railway hotels, run by the committees now, had been so ingrained by the railway companies that when the grouping of 1923 was announced, it was a practical, seamless transfer. 93 hotels were still under railway control, with others having been sold off to private companies or levelled during the railway's lifetime. The only affected parties were superintendents. The superintendent would collate all the committee's recommendations and take them to the railways. But with 130 companies now becoming 4, it meant a lot of superintendents were now out of work. The Big Four knew that just having one man do the work of several was not going to work, so they reorganised the management structure with some men being promoted to area controllers. It was kind of the same job, but it meant a lot less men were now being made redundant. The Big Four ran its hotels pretty much as they did before, but it was in 1948 when the whole structure changed. The Transport Act forced the Big Four to become one nationalised railway, British Railways. This meant that the hotels would be state-owned as well. It ran as a separate body adjacent to the railway and would be overseen by the British Transport Commission, and they themselves employed a group of people called the Hotel Executives and ran with little change for nearly 15 years. In 1962, in a shake-up of assets, the British Transport Commission was abolished, and with it the executives. In its place, the remaining hotels were now a subsidiary of the Railway Board and now in charge of British Railways. With it, the hotels became a brand new company called British Transport Hotels. This was a golden opportunity for the railway hotel revival, especially at a time when the railway was under pressure from customers turning from rail to road. The revival sadly never worked, and in 1983 it was decided to sell off the remaining hotels to private firms and companies, and the time-honoured tradition of railway hotels faded away. Even though the railway hotels are no longer associated with the railway, many are still standing and still retaining their original names. The more notable railway hotels include the Grosvenor Hotel in London, which is now a 5-star luxury retreat, and the too many to mention Midland Hotels, which are named up and down the country, and the Claremont Charing Cross Hotel right on top of the station itself, still going strong with stunning rooms for both the business traveller and the tourist. At the National Railway Museum, if you look closely in the warehouse, remnants of the British Transport Hotel's heyday is still about. There are cutlery, dishes, all with the BTH logo emblazoned. So if you're travelling, have a look at the hotels around you. Even if you are well away from the station, railway history can be found in the most unlikely of places.